Right by.
So tell the group a little bit about yourself and how you ended up coming to talk.
Oh, thank you. My name is John Caltabiano. I run supply chain for Jabil, and really we've started our digital journey quite a number of years ago, really by getting customers pushing us to solve very specific supply chain problems. So we've been involved in digital supply chain, digital manufacturing, the smart factory. So we have a lot of initiatives right now connected together, trying to drive a much more robust and better solution for our customers. So I want to thank you for inviting me. Hopefully my story will resonate with everyone.
Well, I think it already does. He wanted to start with his customers, right?
Thank you.
Not supplier. Okay, so we're going to have a couple of case studies, and then we're going to come back together, and we're going to ideate around digital manufacturing transformation.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
I'm going to really talk about two things today. Number one is really why digital, because obviously it's pretty painful, so you better know why you're doing it and putting the effort in, and I think that concept's really important. And the second thing is I will talk about the things that we did at Jabil on the supply chain side to drive our digital transformation, which we've been kind of on this journey. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we've been on this journey about 8 years, and hopefully it'll give you a good perspective on our complex world as well as the opportunity that's in front of everyone who goes on this journey. So first of all, let's see if I'm doing this right. There we go. Okay, so these are some really interesting company names. These are not really this is not really why supply chain digital, but really these are really interesting companies in the fact that how much they disrupted the businesses that they're in the markets that they're in, and these are digital companies. Uber is a taxi company with no taxis. Airbnb is a hotel company with no hotels. YouTube is a movie production company with no movie studios. Netflix is a movie company with no theaters. Tesla is a car company, but the valuation of Tesla is not really about being a car company, it's about being a data company. And lastly, everybody knows Amazon. Amazon is a retailer without stores. And these companies have massive valuations when you compare them to their peers. And it's really because the market looks at them differently because these are digital companies and they've disrupted their world. And I think it's one of the first reasons of why digital. The second reason is that I think right now boards of directors are starting to ask a lot of questions. This has been going on for a number of years, but the boards are asking, hey, why aren't we digital? What do we need to do to be digital? But this was a Gartner study that talked about how involved are boards in driving a digital transformation. So again, this is like 58% are directly involved and 80-some% are involved. So that's a big kind of push by some pretty important people and companies. So again, a very important reason why digital. And then lastly, this is some data from a book about digital kind of pioneers. And this guy who wrote the book, he studied companies both for their revenue generation and their profitability. And it's interesting that the companies he considered to be digital masters outperformed their peers. So again, another really strong reason of why digital. So when we started thinking about our problems as a company, it became quite clear that for Jabil, we had some big challenges. If you don't know Jabil real well, we're an $18 billion manufacturing services company. We play in what's considered the electronic space, but we actually make a lot of products that don't have any electronics in it at all. We're a big provider of some very large smartphone components. We make all of HP's LaserJet printers. We make consumer products like the iRobot Roomba. So all of these kinds of things for us are very challenging customers in a very challenging environment. And so we get asked all the time by our customers, where's our parts? What's the status of our clear to build? When are you going to ship? We'd like to know what parts are affected by this particular event or this particular event. So we were really challenged. This happened to us about 7-8 years ago. And we really, at the same time, we're a pretty asset-based company. So the challenges we have is we can't solve all our problems by carrying inventory. We have to come up with better ways, and better ways involve a lot of the newer digital analytics, visibility tools, and some of the actionable insights that come from some of the new digital platforms. And so we set out, we said, really, what's the opportunity for supply chain? So the opportunity for supply chain is pretty significant. This comes from a study from Boston Consulting Group. But the opportunity to improve supply chain performance is really phenomenal. Think about a 10% increase in product availability, 25% faster response times, 40 to 110% higher operating margins, 30% better realization of working capital reductions, and a 17 to 64% fewer cash conversion days. I live for that stuff if we could actually do that. But keep in mind that we're in a different world now. We live in an on-demand market. Customers want things highly customized. Customers want them in shorter lead times. The markets change rapidly, and product life cycles are much shorter. In fact, one of the things that's really driving a lot of the asset problems that many companies have is just this very basic fact that we don't know what to go build, and our lead times for parts are really long. So these are all dynamics that were a problem for us. We have a little bit about our supply chain network. We have close to 20,000 unique suppliers. We deal with about 300 unique customers, some of the largest and best brands in the world. We have about 100 unique factories in 23 different countries, and we're shipping about, I think on an average, our average inventory per day, if you think about things like cash, we're talking about 10 to, depending on the business, a $10 to $50 million of inventory is worth 1 day of inventory. So pretty significant opportunities for us. So at Jabil, our challenges were pretty big. We've made investments in tools over the years. And I've been at Jabil 10 years. I was at another manufacturing, very large company, competitor of Jabil's for 10 years prior. We're all using the same stuff. Some of you provided that stuff to us in the past. But this is what our supply chain looks like if you look at the place where we do the work. So these are all systems. We're an SAP company. We have the largest instance of SAP in the world. We're a single instance. We have one item master for 100 different factories. So we have some advantages. We've done some good things, but boy, have we proliferated a lot of tools. These tools all have supply chain data in them. These tools are all used by our people across all of our factories. So we have contract systems in here. Some of the systems you recognize. We use Kinaxis. We're a big user of Kinaxis. We have production planning tools. We have production planning optimization tools. We have our engineering change control system. So all of these acronyms here are Jabil systems. And the way we manage the business was with spreadsheets. So the way we connected all that data together, we used to laugh about the fact that the way you hired a supply chain leader in Jabil was their first thing was they had to be really good with Excel. If they weren't good with Excel, they weren't going to really know what to do, how to do their jobs. So this was a big issue for us. And it's not that we didn't have good data and good systems. I really felt like when, we really knew what we were doing. But if you couple that with the demands of customers and the rapid changes that we've seen in the market today, this process was not going to cut it. We're operating in silos. We have our production planning people doing things, our purchasing people doing things, our commodity managers doing things, warehouse doing things, our customers giving us different kinds of forecasts, all of this activity going on, and lead times for products are shorter. Obviously, the markets are changing, and we're really confronted with some really challenging environments. So this process was not going to cut it. And what the big kind of event that occurred that got us going was back in 2011 when we had the Japan earthquake and tsunami. We were asked a simple question by our customers: which suppliers are affected by what just happened? And we're like, we can do this. We're going to find out where our suppliers are. We looked in our systems, and our systems have all the ship from locations for all of our suppliers. That's not where they make the parts. It's where they're shipped from. That's where we order the parts from. So immediately we had this huge issue about being able to answer a really simple question. So we started to look at tools to help us do that. And that's how we got started. It was a really simple question, but it became really broad. So what it looks like today, we still have all these systems running. But overlaid on top of it is our digital platform. And this digital platform really has three basic elements to it that are different. And you can think about it, what Excel does. I mean, you can Pareto, you can do trend charts, you can look at large lists of parts and combine different elements. But this platform really gives us three things. It gives us the ability to do advanced analytics. It gives us visibility. And it allows us to do what we call orchestration, which is our supply chain leaders can define, I'm going to go do these 25 things. I'm going to make this product, I'm going to shorten the lead time of this product. Here's the list of things I need to go do. And it's really just sitting on top of all of our systems. The differences are it's 24/7, so I can look at anything, anywhere, anytime. I don't have to tell my customer I have to wait. Hey, wait till I run MRP on Monday. Oh, just ran MRP, can't make those changes until next week. Oh, don't have all of our information. I have to wait till Asia wakes up because I have to call somebody to run a report to generate a spreadsheet. So again, all these things start to change the dynamic of this idea of 24/7 visibility. The second thing it has is advanced analytics. So we have to define what those analytics are and what we're going to do with them. And then lastly, orchestration. So this is really just a platform. If you think about the elements, you can kind of read it. But what's behind this are a bunch of workflows, a bunch of how do you do supply chain, and taking us away from this, kind of every supply chain leader has their own favorite spreadsheets and macros that they use to run the business. This is a fundamental change because using this type of platform now changes the way you do the work, changes what expertise your people have, and also the ability to actually make these things do what you want them to do because it's pulling all your data and the data has to be right. So that's our platform. It's basically got, if you look at the blue boxes across the top, these are basically the workflows that we've now defined. And the green really just represents the impact we're trying to have with those workflows. So there's lots of things that, obviously these are all familiar things to everybody, but we had to define inside of this platform an NPI Design Workflow. So as an example, when we have a new bill of material presented to us, early design phase, we can run it through this platform, and it tells us everything we need to know about those parts immediately in front of the engineer. It gives us life cycle data. It gives us product obsolescence notifications. It tells them what the quality level of those parts are if we're already using them, all at their fingertips, things that would have taken weeks to collect. So that's an example. These workflows were all defined by Jabil supply chain guys, plus some outside consultants that helped us get through this process. There's basically 4, what I call the building blocks and the sacred kind of elements of our platform. The first is visibility. This is a huge issue because we thought, oh, that's great because if everybody knows what's going on in the supply chain is going to perform better. The problem is not everybody wants to give visibility. Suppliers don't want you to know where the parts are in their factory. We don't always want our customers to know where their stuff is in our factory because sometimes it's bad news or it needs to be explained. And many customers don't want their data to be visible to anybody else. So really big challenges in terms of dealing with that. Embracing complexity, this is a lot of stuff. I would say it's one of the biggest challenges we've had is teaching everybody that they're going to have access to a lot of information very quickly, and they need to be able to handle that and make decisions. Cross-functional intelligence, we talked about all those silos of different information that's out there in all these systems. Now you have the ability at your fingertips anywhere in the world, anytime, to get at that information. So it needs to be accurate. And you need to be able to understand it. You need to understand data rules and the definitions of what's in there. And then lastly, cloud and mobility. We're taking we're a very inwardly focused company. We have all of our own hardware. All our systems run on our own hardware. We're moving to a cloud environment, and that's very different. And then lastly, mobility. I think it's a really unique thing, but you don't realize it. You go bring people into the company who are in their 20s, mid-20s, early 30s. They do everything on their smartphones. They're used to that. They expect when they come to work to be able to run supply chain from their smartphone. Hey, what are my shortages today? Oh, I've got this, this, and this. Okay, let me click here. Let me go find out who the contact information is. I can go make my phone calls. This is really fundamental to the change to what digital can provide you. And again, we're talking about a world where you have to move fast, you have to be able to handle lots of complexity, and we're on a 24/7 cycle. So this is a representation of the elements of what are buried in all the details of the workflows and the tools that we've put in place. I'll try to walk you through a couple of these to give you some examples of the functionality that's built into the system. Speed, these are all what I would call, if you had there's applications under each one of these that are predefined workflows that we've had to define because again, we don't want people going to spreadsheets. So if they want a shortage list or they want to get a list of the most likely shortages because of certain market conditions, they're going to get a standardized format, but they can edit it and massage it how they want. So example with speed, flexibility, and scalability, just a simple example of our postponement strategies. We have thousands of part numbers that we're working on across the world trying to put those parts into some postponement model, whether it's a VMI model, a JIT model, but there's activities that have to go on to do that. And you need to know what parts, you need to know which are the critical ones, we need to know what the status is. So that's an example of a workflow. For risk management has really 2 elements in it. This was really a very interesting one and probably has a lot of analytics now tied to it. We have what we call reactive risk management, which is event-driven risk management. And then we have proactive risk management, which basically says, I know my supply chain can be less risky. What are the things I need to go do? And so we had to come up with risk algorithms to measure risk, quality levels, delivery performance, single source versus multi-source. What kind of part is it? Is it a screw or is it a ASIC? Is it a sheet metal cabinet? Is it a small plastic part? Does it come from a very remote region of China, or does it come from, San Jose? These are all things that go into that. And again, we can measure the risk, and then we can drive continuous improvement using the system to give us the actions to take, whether it's, hey, there's this part here could be multi-sourced. We've checked the system goes out and checks and says, customer A, B, and C are using that same part from a different supplier. So it must be the same part. Again, things that we would have never been able to do that quickly. On the event side really is where we're taking outside information and bringing it into our system. Earthquake information, hurricane information. I'm getting lots of text messages today about the hurricane coming into Florida. What the system does is, now that we know where the manufacturers are located and even where their sub-tier suppliers are located, it then looks at the events and sends us signals immediately telling us what parts may be affected. Again, it doesn't change the fact that somebody has to call those suppliers and find out, are you okay, and are my parts affected? Is your factory shut down? Can you continue to supply parts? It still doesn't take the human element out of it, but it gives us a much faster response time to events. And again, gives us the ability, even if it's a disaster, we're still first in line, or we can measure the impact of that disaster and get that information in front of the customer quickly so they can make changes. So that's a little bit about risk management. A bunch of workflow tools, 2 elements, the global intelligence, which is the 4th one down, and the 6th one down, the procurement intelligence, are really for the commercial side of what we do around commodity management. So we're taking a lot of commodity data, pulling it into our tool set, also pricing information, worldwide pricing information across all of our customers, plus all of the public domain information that's out there. So we crawl the web, we pull in unstructured data, and we do the analytics around, are we price competitive? Are there changes in price occurring in the market? Are things getting tighter? Those are things that are presented to our commercial guys. And when we go through contract negotiations, now we have a tool set that somebody doesn't have to spend 2 weeks preparing for the negotiation. We already have a predefined template. All that information's available online for the commodity manager to do the negotiations. So pretty fundamental change in how we're doing things. The operational expertise side, that's really what we do in the factories. It's purchasing, planning, how we're connected to the factory. There's a bunch of things going on there. I would say that's the area we've actually struggled the most on because it involves connecting to the factory. So everybody knows there's a production schedule and there's a master schedule. The production schedule and the master schedule are not always the same. And we have material coming in based on a master schedule, but the factory's decided, or because of certain constraints, building something else. We want the material to come in based on the production schedule, because we don't want material coming in that we're not going to use. So again, I think it's a really critical element to get all those things linked together. And that'll really give us a much more better performing supply chain. And then the last element here talks about the visibility and analytics. We have the network optimization tool set where people can give us all their BOMs, all their suppliers, all their locations, all their ship-to locations for all their products, and we can analyze the best, most optimal supply chain footprint. There's other companies out there that have the same things. This is just built into this tool set, so we have it real time when we need it. So that's a little bit about what we've done and where we've been. I can tell you that the biggest challenge we have is getting people to use the tools and not falling back to their spreadsheets. I think that the challenge we have with our people in making this transformation is the biggest challenge. I have an organization of about, relative, take the buyers and the material handlers and the planners that are in the factories out of the equation. I have about 500 people that are managing supply chains in one form or another, whether it's technical, whether it's commercial. and they all love to go back to their spreadsheets. So what I do is I measure how much people are using the data warehouse with spreadsheets versus how much they're using our tool set. And because we believe that the tool set's going to drive better performance. So really, I've got two kind of comments to end with. One is, really, this is a journey that I think makes working in supply chain probably the most exciting time in my career. There's so much transformation going on. There's so many exciting things that can be done with these new tools and with the ideas that people have. Just walking around last night, just seeing the innovation from many companies I had never even talked to before is really pretty amazing. So for you, I just left with a couple what I call to actions here. If you are going to go down this path, create a vision is really important. We had to do that. We call our vision intelligent digital supply chain as opposed to stupid digital supply chain. I said, wow, of course it's going to be intelligent. But it really helped people understand what we're talking about. We're talking about the ability to to help our people do less spreadsheet manipulation, more managing the supply chain and doing things that drive supply chain performance. So this is just some bullet points that came out of a book called Leading Digital, and they're for your information. It's an interesting book. There's a lot of digital books out there. The last thing I want to leave you with really is don't be left behind. You'll end up with like a lot of the companies that are being displaced by this digital disruption. We have a great supply chain solution. Others do too. I think this is the wave of the future. It makes supply chain exciting. And then lastly, make sure you know what your next steps are. And thank you very much.